the popcorn chat. Ooh.
Unlike some of its peers, The Forest,
That's the loudest thing I've ever heard.
survival horror game from Canadian-based studio Night Games, delivered on not just the popular gather and craft survival game format, but also added a surprisingly complex and equally bananas story featuring cannibals and mutants. With the immediate arrival of its long-awaited sequel, Sons of the Forest, comes not only the pressure to top the beloved experience of the original, but also to add some new and increasingly wild surprises.
Ew.
And based on the 5 hours that I've played so far, I'm not only excited about the sequel's potential, but also confident that Night could revolutionize the survival genre.
Like they already did with the first one.
The Forest begins with a simple premise. You've crash landed on a mysterious peninsula and
If you don't
begin
know
your
this by
quest
now,
to
you're an
survive
idiot.
at all costs. Sons of the Forest largely shares the same setup, substituting your son for a missing billionaire. It's a basic idea, but one that allows you to jump straight into the action, allowing players who have no intention of progressing the rescue mission to solely focus on building their very own lakeside resort with some friends right away. Just like its predecessor, you can play, build, and cause chaos with 7 of your friends in co-op.
I'm glad that co-op's right away. With the Forest one, we had to wait months for multiplayer. Months.
At the very start of Sons of the Forest, you're introduced to Calvin, an elite soldier who not only survived the helicopter crash that stranded you on the island, but is also very much along for the survival ride as an AI companion.
Wait, so is this only if you play solo, you get Calvin? I want Calvin when we're not playing solo. I'm gonna have to do a solo playthrough on top of the multiplayer playthrough then, if we get Calvin, because it's gonna be a whole different experience.
Calvin will follow you around
cool.
and respond to commands issued via a bunch of handy quick select options on a notepad. He'll take orders to see out your less than desirable busy work.
That's an
such as
interesting
chopping down
dynamic.
trees and gathering logs.
Hell yeah.
This affords more time to either sculpt
Ooh,
a
look at that new
masterpiece.
axe. We saw a bunch of new weapons already, a couple of new enemies, and new animations for the enemies. We saw one of those little dudes backflip, and we saw one of the roly-poly, like the slinky mutants.
And if you decide you're not interested in having a worker bee along for the ride, you have the option to disable Calvin in the most realistic way possible. Shoot him in the head, and you'll remove him from your session permanently.
He's saying multiplayer session, so it's not just single player where you get Calvin. And when he dies, he dies. Bro, I guarantee we're accidentally friendly firing Calvin in the face episode 1 somehow. Just saying.
During my playtime, I caught a glimpse of Virginia, a mutant with 3 arms and 3 legs. She quickly scalpered once I approached,
Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different AI.
and definitely had more of a skittish sensibility than Calvin. But the developers told me that she can eventually be recruited and will become attached to you over time.
She's got a freaking, her second arm has a gat and her main, she's dual wielding, brother. I want multiple arms on my character.
They compared her instincts to that of an elusive and independent cat, which stands in opposition to Calvin's lovable
You see the gibs on
and
the
obedient
mutant there?
dog.
That was
The
sick.
AI improvements aren't.
And we have full-blown guns now. I'm assuming they crashed with a helicopter or something.
On our expedition, we came across several groups of enemies, ranging from a cluster of cannibals to a mob of monstrosities,
Ew.
each demonstrating their own impressive decision-making abilities. It felt like my enemies were thinking and making active decisions based on not only my
Hell
actions,
yeah.
but also their situations and environment. I saw enemies consoling their fallen friends, changing their clothes depending on the weather conditions.
The mutants are going to have different clothes based on their weather conditions? Can I take the clothes off of them?
The developers explained to me that certain enemies with leadership qualities can influence the decisions of others and even promote ideas in their ranks such as religion, and that each individual has their own tastes, desires, and proclivities.
That's going to be cool. So like every little fight's going to have like its own little pizzazz to it.
I saw enemies adapting to changing their ecosystem and weather conditions, which now cycle through seasons that change as you progress.
I love seasons and weather in video games. Just look at Icarus. This just feels like they're taking the Forest one and they're just adding a bunch of more stuff, which is all we could ask for.
As you'd expect, the titular forest makes a return, and it looks better than ever. From the complex density of foliage, to the gorgeous rainfall and beautifully lit cave stalactites amongst the hanging corpses and mutant fetuses, the graphical power
back.
on show here rivals the majority of AAA releases. It was a joy to explore without even the slightest
The logs, water physics.
hint of repetition in.
So you could actually build down from a river and then you just chop the trees into the river and
its design. With a tease of bunkers, villages, and God knows what else in a world that's promised to be 4 times larger than the original, I can easily see myself getting lost and then sidetracked in the wilderness for hours on end. The construction tools have been significantly overhauled for the sequel. Gone are the floating blue ghost building blocks, replaced by user-friendly, realistic presentation of wilderness carpentry. Instructions are more literal, and actions are contextual. Instead of just loading resources into a ghost version of the final product, you're now free to, with magnetic and snapping assistance, manually place logs and sticks in the direction that you'd like, allowing for a complete customization of your structure.
Lincoln Logs.
Then, of course, there's the optional story to follow. From the teasers in the trailers, this is implied to be bigger and perhaps even crazier than the original.
Crazier than the original is hard to do, because the original was crazy.
But amongst the time spent constructing and fighting off hordes of cannibals, I didn't really get a sense of how the story was going to go beyond the initial premise. It did feel very familiar to the story of the forest though, which I guess makes sense in the term of dropping players right into the action. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't have concerns that it could potentially retread old ground. Sons of the Forest appears to evolve and build on every aspect of its predecessor, with a focused goal of realism and developing a...
Just went full Gollum on that fish, bro.
And it feels like the building blocks are there to create something truly special. But its killer feature is the addition of impressively sophisticated and smarter AI enemies and companions that could not only provide a huge leap forward for the series, but the survival game genre as a whole.
Yeah. Take my money. We're going to be playing the absolute living crud out of this game. I promise you that.